Hi, I'm Alec Radry, WJSP Station Manager and Colonial Corner News Anchor. The Moore School District is putting a referendum up for a public vote in September to address a number of issues with the school facilities throughout the district. I had some questions about the referendum and I invited Dr. Mucci. Dr. Mucci is joined by District Business Administrator, Mr. Anthony LaFranco. Thanks for taking the time to come to the studio to answer some questions. I'd like to start off by talking about some of the more financial aspects of the referendum and sort of the why behind the upcoming vote. So my first question is, what are some of the big ticket renovation items that the district has planned for the upcoming referendum?
First of all, thank you so much for having us. It's very exciting to be here. And some of the larger items that folks will notice in the referendum are classroom expansions at Sussex Avenue School, one for each grade level, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Classroom additions at Frelinghuysen Middle School to house the classes that are now currently being taught in trailers outside of the school. In addition to that, the most exciting feedback we've gotten is on the HVAC repairs. So when you break down HVAC, it's heating, ventilation, air conditioning, everything about good quality air so that we can feel wonderful when we're in the classroom and we can be ready for teaching and learning. HVAC repairs will take place in all of our schools across the district. We'll be having more energy efficient boilers, more consistent heat and cooling, and every instructional space in the district will be climate controlled with air conditioning. In addition to that, our pool here at Morristown High School is at end of life. So we really need to replace that pool, otherwise we'll have a huge cavern in the middle of our school district. So we're looking forward to replacing that pool if the referendum vote is successful, to continue the tradition that we have with championship swim teams and wonderful swim programs for our school students and our community.
Alrighty, so the district on the website has a lot of information about how the district plans on getting the money required for the referendum. So I was wondering if the state had already agreed to cover a portion of the upcoming budget.
Very exciting. Yes, they did, and Mr. LaFranco can talk about that.
Yeah, so the process started months ago working with our district architect. He had to complete applications for all the schools and all the projects, delineating the types of projects and what's going into them and what were the costs. After the state's review, they determine, based on whether it's renovations or expansion, a certain percentage that they'll cover. We just recently received the information, so we're still finalizing that, but it looks like the state will cover approximately 29% of the total project costs.
Will there be a tax hike? And if so, how does the district plan on justifying it to the families in the district, especially those who live below the poverty line?
So yes, it will mean a tax increase to the residents of Morristown and Morris Township. A bond referendum is similar to for homeowners taking out a home equity loan to make repairs to their houses. The factor is based similar to how we budget our school budget, where it's based on the value of their homes. So it's going to impact different people differently across the municipality. For people below the poverty line, depending on their housing situation, if renters and things like that, there's no way for us to predict that. But the state does have programs to help minimize the impact of increases to real estate taxes. For example, for senior citizens, there are multiple programs that allow refunds and tax caps on how much they can pay.
All right. What assurances do you have for the taxpayer that another large referendum won't be required in the near future?
That's a great question. In fact, I don't remember the number of years, but how long is it since the district's had a referendum?
It's been over 30 years.
Over 30 years. So our goal would be to stick with that plan. This is a large-scale referendum because we have not gone out to the taxpayers for a referendum in, as Mr. LaFranco mentioned, over 30 years. This will modernize our school facilities. It will make them easier to maintain. And our hope is that we can continue to support the cost of ownership of the referendum through our regular operating budget. Mr. LaFranco, you have anything to add there?
So I'd just like to point out that with this referendum, we're tackling all the infrastructure stuff that we can, all the boilers, multiple roofing material and windows. So our buildings will be airtight, watertight. After this, we'll just have to look at spaces inside that we're not able to get to, and some classroom renovations, some flooring upgrades here or there, things that are smaller in nature. So we hope to be able to do those through the operating budget, as Dr. Mucci mentions.
How will you ensure that the work is carried out to the utmost quality so that an issue like the roof replacement on the high school from last summer doesn't happen again?
Nobody wants to see that again. A couple of fire alarms, we did, and with every project, there are certain things that even when you plan well, you're going to have some unforeseeable issues that you have to address. And the great thing about producing a referendum is you can build in for those unexpected expenses, and you can also work to make sure that the appropriate contractors are awarded. But there's also limitations.
Correct. So in the state of New Jersey, there are limitations on how school districts can procure those items. So we're required to do what's called a public bid, and the only item that we can look for in those bids is based on the value. So we have to go with the lowest value. So we try to surround ourselves with the right professionals to make sure that they're monitoring those. And on certain projects that are larger in nature, such as the additions, we're also required to have a construction manager on site. And what's good about that is that that's a neutral third party who's reviewing not only the architect's work to make sure it's designed properly, but reviewing the contractor's work to make sure it's being implemented as designed. So we'll have multiple levels of review, plus our own district staff, our B&G director, Mr. Glenn Miller, and his assistant, Al Rappa.
In the case of the referendum doesn't pass this upcoming September, will the district retry to pass something as sort of an individual large ticket item referendum, or what's the plan?
The board and the administration were very intentional about having this as a simple one question vote. We've already eliminated items from our wish list that we didn't feel were urgent. So everything that we're presenting to the public is something that we believe we need to begin work on in short order. In the event that the referendum fails in September, we would conduct some surveys, we would speak to voters, we would try to understand where we missed the mark. And we would take that feedback to go out to referendum again, taking into consideration what we learned if the referendum were to fail.
When do you expect the work will be finished?
So with a work of this scale, it will take at least 3 years or until 2030 for all of the work to be completed. Should the voters elect to pass the referendum in September, when students return to school the following September, so in 2027, they would see some changes immediately, perhaps bathroom renovations, and we would use that first summer to stage some of the projects that will take longer amounts of time to complete. Some of the work will be simultaneous while school is in session. If it's an area that is outside of instructional space, we will work to have other work done in the evening, what we would call third shift work or after school hours for certain lighting and HVAC projects. And the process would be simply doing groups of work that are requiring the same workers to be on site in batches. The bulk of the work would begin in the second summer if the referendum were to pass, and that's where we'd start seeing some of those real changes and improvements. But as you can imagine, replacing a pool of our size is going to be quite an undertaking. I don't know if you have something to add to.
Yeah, so with that project alone, for example, with the pool, that's scheduled to be at least an 18-month project. So that area would have to be closed off, and that work could be done during the school day and afterwards. We do have experience in our history doing projects throughout the day. We would have contractors here at night after the kids leave the building, and we make sure the spaces are all cleaned up and ready for students the next day.
Alrighty, and my final question for this section. How do you plan on persuading families who might have 8th graders or kids who are in high school to cover such a large budget when maybe they won't have kids in the district anymore, but they'll still have to pay increased taxes and stuff like that?
Well, that question hits home to me because my husband and I are empty nesters. All of our children have been through the school system in our town, and they are now out in their careers. And to me, when I look at the wonderful education they had in our community, I consider it my responsibility to make sure that that same level and quality is ensured for students who come after those who are in my own family. And in New Jersey, there is an incredibly strong correlation between the property values of your home and the quality of a school system. So investing in our schools is investing in the value of your home and making it more marketable to people who may want to purchase your home when you're ready to sell.
We have more questions to ask, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back. I'd like to ask about, kind of going back into the pool. So does the school earn money from keeping the pool in operation? And if so, what's the return on investment that we could see from the $12 million renovation?
That's a great question, and Mr. LaFranco is responsible for the individuals who use our pool and the revenue generating streams that we have from that.
Yep. So we are the home pool for multiple schools in our area, such as Parsippany and Hanover Park. So we do collect some revenue for that rental, but it's not an incredibly lot of money. One thing that came out of some meetings we had last summer from the Parents Association involved with the pool was that we should have an aquatics director to help bring more energy into that and bring more outside groups and to help make that more of a revenue factor. So right now we don't have an analysis on return on investment on that, but we do hope to get more use out of that in the future once it's replaced.
Are there any plans for an expansion of the high school for perhaps more classrooms or more instructional space?
So not classrooms or instructional space at this time, but modernization of some of the spaces that we need to use more efficiently. So for example, I hope some of you have noticed that we made improvements internally with our own team on some of the science labs here at the high school. So we hope to continue that work of modernizing spaces that are in existence, but in terms of the classroom footprint for the high school, it won't change.
So one thing we are adding is the cafeteria addition to be able to have more students there. And one thing to highlight, it will be the change to the media center and the guidance suite to make more of an inviting space for have a student-centered area.
100%, yes.
Can you tell us what the rough cost was for the recent aesthetic upgrades in the high school, like the atrium?
So that work was done last summer. That was about $300,000 when you take into consideration new flooring, painting of the block walls, new lighting, new fixtures. That was done in coordination with the roof work that was done along with the new skylight.
Are there any plans to spend more money with the referendum on form over function upgrades or stuff that's sort of more making the space more inviting rather than strict, this is an academic space or something along those lines?
So flexible learning spaces are really critical to the way that we live today. So you'll notice as you go through the project list on the referendum, which can be viewed on our website, particular upgrades to media centers, shared spaces, collaborative learning spaces. So for example, some of our classroom expansions at FMS will have more flexible seating, allow not to feel like every classroom is just a place where students come and sit in rows and have lectures, but there can be more of a dynamic learning experience, opportunities for peer-to-peer collaboration. Looking at the beautiful space here that we have for the broadcasting program, it's built on the way people live and work, collaboration, providing feedback, and it's not a static space. So our vision with the spaces that are going to be improved will do exactly as you're describing. Emphasize the function over the form of a way a traditional classroom would look, and provide students with opportunities for inquiry, collaboration, effective use of technology, and really what it means to be a learner in our ever-changing world.
So you mentioned that you're renovating the media center, and I've seen a few of the digital mock-ups that you have of the renovation. And I've noticed that while I've been at the high school, a lot of the book space, a lot of the space that was strictly part of the library has sort of been taken over, may it be like a secondary cafeteria. So with the upgrade to the media center, is there going to be more bookshelf space, or is that going to kind of stand where it is right now?
So interestingly, we would have the capacity to add more books to the library under the model that we have designed in the renderings that you saw. And to Mr. LaFranco's earlier point, the cafeteria expansion is essential so that spaces like the media center don't have to be treated as an auxiliary cafeteria to provide seating during the lunch hour. Interestingly, since the last time there has been work done on the media centers here in the district, there's much more efficient shelving models available where you can easily get more books in the same amount of space. So there's some exciting new products available for modern libraries, and we have no commitment to reduce in any way the number of books accessible to our students during the school day. And in fact, we hoped to provide more spaces for those books and those opportunities for students.
All right, and while I've been at the high school, the district has spent millions of dollars upgrading sports facilities. And I was wondering, aside from the pool, if there are any other plans to upgrade sports facilities throughout the district and the high school.
Not in the referendum, but if you've driven by FMS lately, you've seen that we, through our capital improvement budget, are providing a new turf field at the front of FMS. It'll be a multi-use field. We're hopeful, and things are on target that it'll be available for high school soccer in the fall, and it'll also be used for baseball and softball. This will allow us to bring some of the programs that are currently run at the county park back on district premises. I don't know if you wanted to add anything about that field.
No, I think you did a good job explaining that, but I'd just like to talk about a little bit about the work that we have done in the past. So we as part of this process, preparing for this, we went back and looked at what we spent in capital projects over the past 12 years. We spent somewhere around $55 million. Of that, only about $5 million went to turf fields or scoreboards. A majority of that went to improving facility spaces. So we've done windows, roofs. We've completely rehabbed Woodland Elementary School a few years ago, where we added new windows, full air conditioning in all the classrooms. So I think we've done a pretty good job trying to keep our buildings in a good shape as possible.
Can you elaborate on the high school cafeteria expansion plan?
So it's going to increase the capacity of the cafeteria by about 1/3, and it'll just go out straight from the entrance that faces the field in that direction. The increased capacity will provide us with opportunities to look at different ways to schedule. So right now the high school is locked into a unit lunch because with the current size of the cafeteria, if we wanted all students to sit and eat there, we'd probably have to begin lunch at 8:30 a.m. and it would go to 2 because we have so many more students than we have places to sit in the cafeteria. However, one of the greatest points of my day is a day when I get to come to the high school during lunch, and I see how the unit lunch builds such tremendous camaraderie among the students. It provides an opportunity for students to meet with their club advisors, to get extra help from a teacher, or to simply hang out with their friends in a place that's different than the cafeteria. And of course, open campus for those who have the privilege pass. So we are not saying that the expansion of the cafeteria would mean an end to unit lunch, but what it would mean is greater opportunities to maybe adjust a schedule that we have no ability to adjust at this point. It could be something as simple as keeping a unit lunch, but having maybe 2, one for freshmen and sophomores, one for juniors and seniors, or keeping the unit lunch, but just having it more manageable. People won't have to wait so long for food because the cafeteria expansion also includes a modernization of the traffic flow through getting your food, getting to the table, and making sure that people have enough time to really eat and not spend as much time of their lunch waiting in line.
And my final question for this section is, will there be any improvements to the academic student experience in the high school? May it be new course offerings or academic resources?
So every year we look to increase and expand our academic program offerings. As we are seeing here, if you want to do anything, if you want to learn about broadcasting or radio, you can do that here in the high school. We have so many amazing programs that other high schools simply do not offer. So program expansion is a part of our work every year that's not tied to a referendum. In the fall, we're looking forward to having expanded offerings in a variety of areas in the high school. You've seen we've added some AP courses like African American history. We also have expanded some of the levels of courses that we offer in the mathematics department. And it's amazing to me that our Morristown High School students are engaging in math classes that second and third semester college students don't see. So I think we offer a fine variety of programs. It's not connected to the referendum, rather it's a part of our work every year. And just putting in a plug, if there's something that you are very interested in an area or program of study that we don't offer here at the high school, Mr. Manning and I are always open to those suggestions from students. We're here to serve you and your interests.
Right. We have a few more questions to ask, but we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back with more. So we're back with our final group of questions, and these will be sort of more district improvements as opposed to high school improvements, and sort of larger items that I had a few questions on. So I wanted to ask about the plans for renovating the auditoriums in the middle school and high school, and what they would look like, and if they'll retain their original appearance, because obviously the high school auditorium is beautiful.
It is one of my most exciting prospects within the referendum. There's actually a book called The American High School, centered on Morristown High School, and it has amazing photographs of the high school shortly after it was completed. So we're working on the renderings right now, or well, our architect is, and one of the guidelines that we've given them is that we would really like to preserve and restore some of the beautiful wood, some of the original feeling of that historic space. It's a fabulous auditorium, and for a little bit of trivia, when you go into the high school, you may have caught your foot on one of the original ventilation systems from our 1900 auditorium. Those were created before air conditioning to bring cool air from the space underneath the auditorium. Under the proposed referendum, we will remove those, have improved ventilation, better lighting, and maintain the spirit of our historic auditorium. Now at Frelinghuysen, the auditorium is more modern than the high school, but it is in desperate need of significant upgrades. There is no air conditioning in the auditorium, making sitting through spring concerts torturous. I see you've been there. So our hope is to make that space more friendly, and also we do a lot. We have so many music productions and musicals and stage productions, so our seats have been used a lot, and all of the seats in both auditoriums need to be replaced. So better lighting, better sound, and a better theater and music experience, and again, another aspect of the referendum that the entire community can benefit from.
This is going to sound a little bit off the cuff, but as a male student at the high school, and even at Frelinghuysen, I know that some of the state of some of the male restrooms, I have no idea about the female restrooms, is pretty dire. And I was just wondering if the restroom renovations will include urinal dividers in the male restrooms.
This is an important question, and I can assure you the female restrooms are just as bad.
So yes, our plan right now is to renovate old bathrooms district-wide, to renovate them so that they're more functional, modern items and that they do have all those dividers and proper rooms in them.
And I know that in your mock-up of the Student Career Center, for the library, you have those individual sort of rooms.
So what might not have been clear from the renderings is if the referendum is to pass, we're flipping the media center and the guidance offices. So the media center would go in the current guidance suite, and then that rendering that you saw with all the individual spaces would actually be the new
offices.
Guidance. So they're offices.
Will teachers be receiving a bonus or an increase of pay with the passing of the referendum?
So salaries are not something that can be included in the referendum. It's separately negotiated through a collective bargaining agreement, and any increases that the teachers would see in their salary, which they very much deserve for one of the hardest jobs out there, is negotiated through a collective bargaining agreement.
Yep, correct.
Will any money be spent on sort of student surveillance programs like GoGuardian and SmartPass?
So GoGuardian and SmartPass are contained within our regular operational budget, and things like that are part of the day-to-day life of a school would not be included in a referendum. The only thing we include in referendum are large-scale capital projects. But happy to hear what you think about the SmartPass system.
I don't know. SmartPass for me is just kind of another box to check, and I noticed that a lot of my teachers are fed up with having to try and teach while monitor who's in the restroom at the same time. So from my experience, SmartPass has been sort of more of a distraction than a help. But I understand how the district, especially for people who might take all 80 minutes of their math class to walk around the building, might need something like that. But for me, I've just kind of felt it to be another sort of administrative hurdle to relieve myself.
Yeah, that's good feedback, and I appreciate kind of learning about it, because whenever you put a new system in place, you've got to talk to folks and see what do they think about it. And like you said, it's interesting to probe into how are teachers perceiving this as well, because as you see every day when you're in the classroom, teachers have 1,000 things to do in that 80 minutes. And how is this working in that way? So I appreciate the feedback.
So will any money be used to enforce no phones policy? And more specifically, from how I read it, Governor Murphy, before he left office, signed something in regards to a sort of statewide no phone expectation. So I was just wondering if the referendum had any plans on getting those Yonder pouches or anything of that sort.
So Yonder pouches are incredibly expensive. They would not be included in a referendum because it falls under that operation. And I also don't think it's practical. I mentioned to you that I have adult children, and I don't bother them all day long when they're at work. But if I need to get in touch with them, I would hope that I would be able to do so. The system that we have in place at Morristown High School is in compliance with the spirit of the law and the way that it has been arrived at. So originally, folks in the legislative level were speaking about bell to bell, like no use of phones at any time. Now we are going through revising our policy to follow that, but Morristown High School was kind of a trailblazer. I think the safest and most effective thing for students is to use the pouches as we use them at the front of the classroom. That still affords you the opportunity to check a message during passing or non-instructional time, and also to access your phone during lunch and have it for time when you're coming to school and leaving school. And that's a responsible use of a cell phone. I think to have a draconian policy that says, no, we're outlawing phones and we're locking them away from everybody during the day is a threat to school security and safety. Because if you look at issues in schools where there have been times where there might be a medical emergency in a classroom, or God forbid, something even worse that we deal with in today's realities, I want every student to be able to grab their phone and call, because we see that those 911 calls are what helped people get assistance quickly. And if we're locking away those phones, how are we teaching and working with you to be able to talk about using technology in a responsible fashion? Phones are a part of our life, and they shouldn't interrupt instruction, but they also should be accessible to us when they need them.
My final question for the, I guess, interview has to do with accessibility for differently abled persons and whether or not the referendum will try and sort of increase accessibility throughout the high school and make the entire district a more hospitable place for people who might not have all the functionalities that we might see with the regular student.
So anytime you do new construction, it has to be ADA compliant. One of the areas that we are talking about is the elevator at Sussex would be a good example.
Correct, yeah. So at Sussex Avenue School, there's a portion of the building where it's 2 levels, and right now there is no elevator. So one of the projects is to add an addition where we're adding an elevator bank there. There's also a section to get up to the gym where you have to go up 2 stairs. So there'll be a ramp constructed so that that is ADA accessible as well. And also as part of the renovation to the auditoriums, the architect is designing seats so that people in wheelchairs, for example, don't have to sit in the back, that there could be rows elsewhere where they'll be able to have a better view of the production.
Thank you, Dr. Mucci and Mr. LaFranco, for answering all the questions that I had for you today. The vote will take place on September 15th. For more information about the referendum, you can go to the district website.